Welcome to Timeless with Vivek Nittoor. Our guest today is Ramgopal Vallath. Ramgopal Vallath is a motivational speaker, best-selling author, startup founder, and editor of a science journal for school teachers. He carved out a highly successful corporate career at various companies such as Titan, Compaq Computers, 3Com, Airtel, Dell, HP, iDiscoveri, and earned the distinction of becoming one of India's youngest heads of a telecom operation during his career at Airtel. From the age of 33, he was afflicted with a rare autoimmune disorder that affected the nerves and gradually weakened the muscles. This created such an impediment in his day to day life that he was barely able to walk and took 90 minutes to put on the buttons of his shirt. An extremely positive approach helped Ram Gopal overcome all these difficulties and reinvent himself. His goal now is to positively touch 10 million lives. He has delivered many talks to employees in corporate organizations as well as to students in many schools and colleges. Ram Gopal earned his BTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering from IIT Madras in 1990 and postgraduate diploma in Business Administration from Xavier Labour Relations Institute, XLRI, Jamshedpur in 1992. For the rest of this program, I'm going to address Ram Gopal by his nickname Ramji. While it is extremely difficult for us to imagine what Ramji has gone through, his positivity is a matter of great inspiration. Hi Ramji, how have you been?
Hi Vivek, thank you for having me on the show. I'm doing well. In spite of the lockdown, mood is very much upbeat, and I'm doing lots of things to keep myself occupied and happy.
That's wonderful to hear, Ramji. So, my first question is, what was your childhood like, and what were the key influences at that stage of your life?
Well, my childhood was, it was not a very normal childhood that people of my current socio-economic strata have. I was born in Kerala and brought up in some of the smallest villages in Kerala. The reason was my father, who used to work in the Kerala State Electricity Board, used to get transferred every 2 to 3 years. And even though many of these areas that he got transferred to were hill stations, high ranges, small villages where they didn't have good schools, he insisted that the whole family moves along with him because he thought that family life is what actually lays the values at an early childhood. So he did not want to have the three of us staying somewhere else and him going on these transfers to various locations. So we were all together in all these locations, and hence I studied in some Malayalam medium government schools. And many of our relatives were quite aghast at this, saying that my father was actually flushing down our future down the toilet because government schools, and that too Malayalam medium government schools, were not considered to be the best education at that point in time for anybody in the middle class. Everybody was trying to get into English medium schools, and that meant convent education. So this was a big risk that my father took. On hindsight, I think it was the best thing that happened to me. It really broadened my vistas, made me a far better person, and made me far more able to do things on my own, handle my own life myself without anybody else's support. Would you like me to elaborate, or?
Yeah, please go ahead, Ramji.
Okay. So the two things that I said, one is opened my vistas and gave me perspectives which otherwise I wouldn't have had. So in my school, for example, most people came from economically backward communities. They were extremely poor, and there were children who had to walk maybe 8 to 10 kilometers through hilly terrain to reach the school. And they would carry with them 2 packets wrapped in newspaper of rice, one for breakfast and one for lunch, because they would have to start at about 5:30, 6 in the morning to reach the school on time by about 8:30. The uniform was any shirt, preferably white, and white munda. You know what's a munda? Dhoti.
That's right.
Right? That was the uniform in our high school, 8th to 10th grade. And flip-flops if you can afford it. Okay, chappals, Hawaii chappals, if you can afford it. Most people were not able to afford it. So 95% of the school came barefoot into the classes. My best friend was a bus driver's son. And another very close friend was a landless farmer's son. 95% of my classmates were children of daily wage earners who are hand to mouth. So when you are brought up in a situation like that, you have so much more empathy towards people of all backgrounds. It is so much easier for me to connect to people who are coming from much more difficult situations than most of my peer group people. So that is a big advantage that I got in life. Number 2 is in terms of academic quality, the school was good actually. I mean, the teachers were good. But there was no such thing as a project or a homework or anything. You come and study in the school because most kids out there did not have time for homework. When you reach back home at 6 o'clock and then you have to help your parents run daily chores, nobody has time for homework. So homeworks were not really there. And to study, and there were some people who were more affluent who could afford tuition. But my father was very insistent that we should not have any tuition, any external tuition ever. So what you study in the school is what you study. After that, you come back and study on your own. So there was really nobody who was trying for any engineering entrance exams from where I was. There was nobody who had even heard about IITs in that village. So for me, studying all this was on my own. So I would go back home and I would spend hours and hours sometimes trying to crack problems, understanding the basics, basic concepts so that I could then learn things on my own. My father was helpful, but he also did not want to encourage me going to him for all kinds of doubts. He was an engineer. So it was really up to me to study myself, set my own timetable, set my own syllabus, learn on my own. And that's why I could solve any problem, because I thought that I had to solve all the problems myself. Nobody was there to support me, which I think helped me crack my IIT JEE entrance exam, Yeah.
I can see that your childhood and your schooling kind of has a very important role to play in the Ramji of today. I see it that way, based on
Without
what
any
you
doubt.
just told me. Yes.
Yeah.
So Ramji, what are your memories of Godavari Hostel in IIT Madras?
So I must tell you that when I came to IIT, I had not spoken even one sentence in English. And when I came to IIT, I was petrified because I didn't know whether I could converse at all to my classmates. And then there was a bunch of seniors who would rag me, and I was so scared of it because my English was broken English. And those guys used to make fun of me because of that. So I went through a slightly difficult phase for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And what I remember was that there's another friend of mine who had traveled with me from Kerala. He was from the next district. In fact, I think all of Kerala had only about 7 or 8 people who got into IIT that year. And so this other gentleman and I would stick together because both of us are quite bad in our English. And we could converse to each other in Malayalam. So that is the first thing I remember about IIT. Of course, after a point in time, there was a senior who was ragging me, who told me, what's wrong with you? Why are you sticking around with a Malayali friend all the time? Why don't you mix around a little more with others and you will learn something? And that's when I really took a decision that I should push myself out of my comfort zone and start interacting with others. And I started doing that, and pretty soon I made a lot of friends. My inhibitions went off. So my English standard was very good, actually, because in grade 9, I had started reading Shakespeare. And the reason was, again, my father, who was the biggest influence in my life. So there was some elocution contest in school, and then he spoke about Mark Antony's speech in William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar play. And he had actually, in his college, I think there was an elocution contest, and he had done Mark Antony's speech, and he spoke about it, and I was fascinated by that speech. And then I wanted to read the rest of the play, because obviously you hear one speech and there's this massive characters in that who are talking about each other, and there was an intrigue happening. And obviously I wanted to learn more about the play. So I read the rest of the play. I think that I was about 13 at that time. I was in the 9th grade. And I would have understood maybe 25% of that, because the English obviously was very, very high level. But over a period of time, I started reading more and more Shakespeare, and my English improved and improved. And so when I came to IIT, the problem was that I didn't have the confidence to speak. I had the knowledge in English to be able to conveniently converse with somebody and very comfortably. But it is just that I didn't have the confidence. And like all people who feel inferior, typically you try to cover it up with a little bit of superiority complex. So in my own mind, I had the superiority complex that I am the one person here who has come from a vernacular medium school. And obviously, so I'm better than all of them, because I'm a son of the soil, and I'm a proud Indian. I didn't have to speak in this language called English. So those were the ways I was trying to cover up my own inferiority complex. That went off once I started speaking to the rest of the people. And soon I became very friendly with my classmates, with some seniors, many people around, and it changed my life completely. Of course, the problem was that it changed my life a little too much. And then instead of going to the classes, I started having parties. And my life in IIT completely veered towards having fun, instead of focusing on why I had come there. So this, when I was preparing for my IIT entrance exam, I was completely focused on getting there, and I had this purpose in life to get into IITs. I lost my purpose. So there was no sense of purpose which was driving me in IIT. And it's also partly, again, I call what I call a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. A fixed mindset sort of, I was victim of a fixed mindset. So what happens in fixed mindset is that you have, you think that your ability is limited to what you are born with, and then you cannot improve on it. So here I was in IIT. I was a smart guy before I came to IIT. Suddenly I was amongst people who were peers, who were all as smart as me, who had all cracked JEE entrance exam, some with better ranks, some with similar ranks. And I was scared that I would expose myself as a mediocre guy. So I decided then not to compete. Rather than do that, I would create a niche for myself which is different from the rest of the people. So I became the cool guy around. What does a cool guy do? Go around smoking, drinking, playing cards, cutting classes. And so I started cutting classes. Once you start cutting classes, then it becomes difficult to make up, because you lost a couple of lessons, and then the next lesson you cannot connect unless you have learned that. So it became a habit, and I started flunking in exams. So by the time I reached my third year, I had failed in so many courses that it was impossible for me to complete my course in 4 years. In fact, it became so bad that I was nearly thrown out of IIT. And that was an incredibly difficult period. So, yeah, that period. Yes, sorry, you're asking something. Yeah.
Yeah. Which professors supported you the most during the difficult period during your stay at IIT Madras?
Honestly, I think there were some professors who were willing to support me. One or two professors actually reached out saying, "Why don't you meet me after class? Let's have a chat." In Malayalam, there is a saying, "Vinasha kale viparita buddhi," right? So when you're into your disaster zone, your brain also doesn't work properly. So, and I didn't meet any of those professors. I kept continuing on my path of destruction, self-destruction, and then I realized that I will not graduate from IIT, and it was possibly the toughest time. And I had reached, when I was joined IIT, I was only 16, and I must have been about 18 or 19 at this time. For an 18-year-old who had been the talk of the town because he had got into IIT with a fantastic JEE rank, everybody in the family knows about him. Suddenly, the fact that you're going to fail and maybe thrown out of IIT because you used to drink a lot or smoke a lot or cut classes a lot, that is not a very nice thing to happen. And to the extent that I even contemplated, why don't I end this life now? But very luckily, I did what I should have done earlier itself. I turned to those people who obviously would support me the most, my parents. So I remember my parents had come to IIT for a visit, and they were staying in the guest house. And I went and I spoke to them, and I told them everything. I told them about my grades, how difficult it is now for me to graduate, how many extra credits I need to get, and how it is impossible for me to complete it in the next 1.5 years. And credit to my parents, actually. Neither of them were judgmental. And they said, we know that we sent a very bright young man to the college and somebody who was so focused. So if you have lost focus and you have lost your way, we need to support you. And we will support you to get back on track. So they stayed back for the next 1 month, actually, in the guest house and cheered me up. And in fact, my father, my project report, my father actually took to get it bound and things like that. And generally, they were there to support, without being judgmental. And that's a huge lesson to all parents, that there are times when your children will go through difficulties. Many of them would be self-imposed because of one's own stupidity. But parents have to be there to support. Rather than being judgmental and make the persons feel even worse, what they need to do is pull them out of that morass. And that's what my parents did. So I did graduate from IIT finally. It took me 5 years instead of 4 years. So instead of graduating in 1989, I graduated in 1990. So yeah, IIT was an incredibly, it was a very, very eventful 5 years yet.
What are your memories of XLRI, Ramji?
Well, XLRI was very different from IIT. IIT, I mean, you can say people are like mostly nerds, very focused on studies, very focused on getting somewhere in terms of, many of them wanted to go abroad and do their higher studies there. Very techie guys, mathematical orientation, highly quanti brains. Whereas XLRI was a mix of all kinds of people, and XLRI specifically, among all the top business schools in the country, went for a cross-section of people. So it had engineers, it had people from the arts, commerce, all kinds of different backgrounds. In fact, one of the questions that they asked me when for my I had got interview calls in all the IIMs because I had cracked the entrance exams. But once I came in for the interview, I was so defensive about my 5 years in IIT that I used to completely mess up the interview. Number two, I was very bad at English at that point in time, so I didn't have the confidence to speak in a group discussion. Whereas many people who are comfortable, much more comfortable and articulate, they would crack the group discussion. So all these IIMs had a group discussion and interview, and I would really mess up the group discussion. And the interview also used to get messed up because of my lack of self-confidence, thanks to being a fifth year. In XLRI, it was different. First of all, there was no group discussion. It was a direct interview. And the interview, it was one of the faculty who was a priest who was actually asking me the questions. So I spoke to him about all the bad habits I had, and so he asked me, "Okay, so you drink?" I said, "Yeah." Then he asked me, "Do you smoke?" I said, "Yes." "Have you had grass, weed?" And I said, "Yes, I have tried." And then the moment I said it, I thought, "Oh my God, I'm not going to get through." But I actually got through. So I think they were actually looking for people with all kinds of perspectives. And so I got my admission, and then in IIT, that 5 years of interacting with people who are different from other states, etc., had opened my perspective quite a bit. In XLRI, it went up by leaps and bounds, actually. Because people are so vastly different from all kinds of different backgrounds. We had very poor people, very rich people, people from north, south, east, west, urban, rural, engineers, artists, then commerce guys, philosophy guys, psychology guys. So, it is wonderful. And also the gender ratio was very different in XLRI. So in IIT, we had 6 girls in a group of 300, in a batch of 300. Whereas in XLRI, out of about 110 people, we had 33 girls. So it is a 30% ratio, which is far healthier. And that actually helped me become a much more rounded person. Because in IIT, one of the things that used to happen to most people was that they became so isolated from women, there absolutely no interaction with women, that they had a very warped view of what a woman should be. And most of them were people who believed that the man is the person who has to decide what the woman should do. And it's only when you start interacting with women on a one-on-one basis as equals that you realize that they are phenomenal. I mean, they're just like there are wonderful men, there are wonderful women too, who are as driven, as ambitious, as good, as smart, and who can reach whatever level they want. So that really opened my eyes, and I think that stint really helped me become a much more rounded person.
Ramji, talking about your experiences during your corporate jobs at Titan, Compaq, 3Com, Airtel, Dell, HP, and iDiscoveri, how were the experiences at these jobs, and how did those experiences impact you as a person?
So my first job was Titan. And Titan is a Tata company, right?
Yes.
So I was very lucky that my first job was in a company which is owned by one of the most amazing groups in the country. Because the Tatas are known for 2-3 things. Number one is they are very, very ethical in the way they do things. Number two is they're they treat employees like family. So the learning I had from Titan, and I was there for about 5.5 years. The learning was that I learned compassion towards colleagues, towards subordinates. And that I learned because all my superiors, whether it was the general manager or the vice president or the managing director, all of them were equally approachable, flat hierarchies in terms of, anybody can speak to anybody. You can walk up to the most senior-most person and give your ideas. You will never be rejected. Nobody would make you feel bad for as a person. Nobody would put you down. If you make a mistake, yes, you would be called up to answer for that, but nobody would personally attack you or make you feel inferior. So there's a lot of respect in the system. And so it molded me to become a very compassionate and respectful individual in my corporate dealings. And that stood me in great stead all my life. So that, and the fact that I had come from a very small village. So subsequently, I did extremely well in my career. Once I moved from Titan after 5.5 years, Titan had the salary was very poor. In Tata companies, generally the salaries are low. Titan was exceptionally low compared to the market. So in the 5.5 years that I was there in Titan, my salary must have gone up about maybe about 30%. But I moved out of Titan. In the next 2 years, my salary went up 10 times. And the reason was that I had a lot of potential and a lot of learning which I had got from my stint in Titan. And I would treat other employees with respect, whether they are reporting to me or whether they are in different departments. I had the ability to actually work seamlessly with people from all other departments. And that really helped me rise up fast and do my targets. I was a sales guy. A sales guy to be able to do target well, he or she has to be able. She has to have the talent to push people in all the different departments, whether it's finance or whether it's accounts or whether it is product or whether it is manufacturing or operations. They all have to help a salesperson do their target. And thanks to my abilities, which I had picked up from Titan and my earlier life, I was able to actually muster up a lot of support. And that helped me achieve my targets on time. I got salary hikes out of turn multiple times. I got promotions. And which is why, I had, by the time I was 34, I became a chief operating officer in the telecom industry. And I was the youngest circle head in the telecom industry in the country at 34. Even today, I don't think anybody has become a circle head at that age in India's telecom industry. I thought that is a great achievement. And so, again, it's all thanks to all the upbringing I've had, all the experiences that I've got. I was always able to motivate myself because of my village school education, where I had to motivate myself to study and solve my own problems myself. And I was always able to handle my own problems at work, which is one of the reasons that I think I was given an independent charge as a COO so early in life.
So Ramji, how did you reach the conclusion that whatever that happened to you was the best thing that could have ever happened, especially given the extremely difficult circumstances and experiences that you have been through?
Yeah. So towards the fag end of my corporate career, and that happened very early for me. After my stint at Airtel, I also worked in Dell and HP. I was Director of Operations India for HP. And it was a very tough job because it encompassed everything other than sales in terms of collections, dispatches, logistics, quality, and it was a role which had a lot of influencing to do without direct control over a lot of things. And I was also the program manager for a division. So it was my responsibility to make a lot of revenue and bottom line happen without directly having the control over it. It was perfect for me because I had that ability to do that. But then what also happened was that there was an issue which cropped up with respect to some of our external dealings, which was some unethical practices that had been on for several years in the organization. And during my time there, in about 3 months' time, that actually was exposed. And so it happened to me in my department, and I was instrumental in trying to contain the problem. But in a typical multinational organization, then it becomes an external agency comes in and they do a complete investigation from the head office, and they figured out that that there was some issue going on which they needed to address. Now, unfortunately for me, 3 months after I joined HP, actually not 3 months after I joined HP, when I was 34 and when I had actually become the youngest chief operating officer, that great feeling of having achieved something was also somewhat depressed because of the fact that I had a physical challenge which has suddenly cropped up. And every time I tried to pick up something with my hand, my fingers would shake. Or every time I tried to climb up steps or down steps, I would feel a lack of balance. And I had no idea what it was, so I kept trying to do some extra workout in the gym, thinking that I was becoming weak. And each time I would, work out for a couple of hours, my body would start shaking uncontrollably. So there was some problem, and I had no idea what it was. And at that time, I was very ambitious, and my ambition was to become the global CEO of a Fortune 500 company by the time I was 45. And it seemed very easy because at the age of 24, I had started working. 34, I had become a chief operating officer in the telecom industry in the country. My name was there in the annual report of one of the largest companies in the country. And I thought another 11 years, I could easily become the global CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But then this physical challenge started growing slowly. And it forced me to quit my job at Airtel. Then I moved to Dell and then to HP, thinking that it is a stress of the job which is causing the problem. And then when this problem started in HP, this investigation, I had actually, I was battling with a parallel physical challenge, which is of huge proportions, because what had happened is 3 months after I joined HP, I had a fever. And the fever completely spiked the condition. And at the end of a week, I was unable to move. Literally unable to move even 1 centimeter. My hands were paralyzed, my legs were paralyzed. I couldn't even lift each of them, half a centimeter each. It was so difficult. Not only that, my voice started going, and I couldn't keep my eyelids open because eyelids would droop and fall by themselves, and I couldn't keep them open. And that's luckily when I was taken to the hospital, and they figured out that I had an autoimmune disorder where my own immune system was attacking my peripheral nerves. And because the peripheral nerves were continuously under attack from my peripherals, my immune system, the nerves were actually losing their ability to conduct electrical impulses from the brain to the muscles. So the muscles were not getting any messages, so they were useless. And over a period of time, the muscles, when they are not responding, when they are not being used, they actually waste away. So it started off with my fine motor muscles. They all actually wasted away, my fingers and hands. And also my biceps and my triceps, my calf muscles, my thigh muscles, all of them were under serious pressure because of this. So I would find it extremely difficult to walk, even stand without holding on to something. So when the condition spiked after the fever, and they diagnosed what is the problem, they started putting me on normal medications, which are steroids. In fact, they first put me on a drug which was intravenous drug, which was administered to me over 5 days, but 32 bottles of that drug. It's called IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulin, it's called. And the IVIG had an amazing effect. Within about a week, my body completely recovered. And I thought after 7 years, wow, I'm now getting completely okay. And I could actually start walking very fast. I was able to run up 9 flights of stairs to my office. I could, for the first time, play cricket with my children. I was able to cook pizza for them. And I thought, wow, my life is turned around. I can go back to trying to become the global CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But it was a cruel joke, because at the end of 1.5 to 2 months, the condition came back as bad as what it was. And that's when the doctor said, IVIG does not last forever. You will have to continuously have it. The problem was that one dose of IVIG had cost 6 lakh rupees. So there was no way I could every 2 months spend 6 lakhs on my body. So I had to have alternate medications, which is when I started having steroids. Steroids also do suppress your immunity. So if your immunity is suppressed, it does not attack your own body. But the problem with that is that then you're also susceptible to all kinds of other infections. And I used to keep falling ill. But more importantly, steroids actually make you fat. I put on about 18 kilos of weight, 20 kilos, I think. Yeah, I was about 96 kilos at that point in time. Not only that, steroids also put some kind of a deposit in your eye lens. And so I had to have cataract operation for both eyes. In spite of all that, my balance was bad. My fingers were useless. I couldn't type. And that's when, I would go on travel to US, etc. And then I would stay in hotels. And the jet lag also would make the condition worse. Morning, I would get up and to attend a meeting at 8 o'clock. I had to get up at 5 because it would take me 90 minutes to put on the 6 buttons of my shirt. And so life was really, really, really tough. But that's when I realized that there's no point actually looking at why me. Why did this happen to me? Because that's totally out of your control. And thinking of why me is not going to help anybody. Where I need to focus on is, how do I make the best of the situation that's been given to me? How do I do things which are under my control? Which is basically action. Action on various fronts. So I started doing things I could do, which is basically, I started blogging, I started writing again. So my blogs were highly appreciated by people because they were humorous blogs. And I would get a lot of positive comments. I would feel wonderful. I would spend time with my children, every day I would spend a couple of hours telling them wacky, funny stories. And I would make up stories. I was very good at making up stories. And even today, after 16 years or so, my children remember some of the stories I had told them when they were 4 to 6 years old. And in fact, they have told these stories to their friends, and some of their friends remember these stories. So I was doing things which made me feel positive. And I would never look at, why did this happen to me? It was completely useless. So that is when I realized that there are 2-3 things that you need to do when you are going through tough times. One is focus on what you can do, what is within your control, and then maximize your life based on that. And reinvent your life without being scared of taking bold new steps. So around this time, when I was going through the worst period of time, I was also sacked from my job in HP because of that investigation which I was talking about. Because the investigation unearthed some lot of unethical practices, and even though I was there only for about 3 months when the investigation started, and the problem was going on for the previous 7 years, they still wanted to sack the senior most person in the organization, so that external risks would be mitigated. So I had to go, and for me it was a devastating blow, because I knew that I could not even walk at that point in time, let alone walk into an interview and get a new job. It was impossible. But I mean, I was down for about 3 hours. I was really, really down, and I cried. My boss spoke to me. In fact, it was very funny. Every week beginning, I would feel very charged up going to the office, and I would tell my wife that wonderful week. I have lots of things to do. I had taken on more and more challenges even in those conditions, and I was taking on the whole projects for that division. I was handling that. I was handling Six Sigma for the division. It's all not directly my responsibility, but I had taken on additional responsibilities. So that Monday morning, I remember I had put up my Facebook post just before stepping out of the office. I had said, looking forward to another great week at work. Yippee. That was my message on my Facebook wall. And I reached the office. The first call I got was from my boss in Singapore. He was the Asia Pacific Vice President for Operations. And the call was to tell me that I'm sacked. So the whole world crashed around my ears. And I cried. And my wife picked me up. She took me to the back home, and she was angry because she had seen me really working so hard during all these tough times. She was wild at the company. But within 3 hours, I bounced back. And then I started focusing on what can I do now? How do I get a job? How do I contribute to the money which we need to have in the family? And I got 2 jobs before the end of the day. I had called up 2 friends. One of them was running a PE firm. Another one was had started an education startup. The education startup guy gave me an ability to work as a consultant for some time at my own pace. The other guy gave me an opportunity to become one of the directors in the PE firm, one of the partners. And I turned down the PE firm and I joined the startup company. And over the next 1 year, I became the chief operating officer there. So that's when I realized, there's no point actually blaming your fate. Because everything that happens to you can be converted to something positive if you have the mindset to do it. People say, all for the best. Yeah, all for the best if you have the mindset to grab it. If you don't have it, you can get depressed. You can get into a vicious tailspin downwards. But it's easy to inculcate. It is possible to inculcate this mindset by constant practice. And that's the learning I've had in life. So that is only the beginning, So I went to the US and I got my treatment done. I went for a clinical trial to the US for the treatment for the disorder. It had a couple of percentage probability of death, but I decided to risk it and went for it. The treatment reset my body. It was chemo and a couple of other, some rat and rabbit extract, etc., which would completely kill the immune system, and then rebooted the immune system using my own stem cells. And I started recovering after that. Then I came back home and I worked out for about 3 to 4 hours every day, exercising every muscle in my body. And I had this massive Excel sheet of 27 exercises and 180 days for the next 180 days. And every exercise, I would put a target for the next 180 days. And every week, the target would keep going up. Then I would go about beating every target every day. So being so action-focused made your mind switch away from the problem to what you can do. So I realized that one very important thing when you want to convert the downturn into something positive is to be able to have a purpose in life. And that time my purpose was that I wanted to walk 5 kilometers at the end of 6 months. And I walked 6 kilometers at the end of 6 months. And I did it in 72 minutes, which was a reasonably fast pace, considering the fact that in the first day, I could walk barely 500 meters in 20 minutes. So, and then that was only one part of it. I rebuilt a lot of muscles in my body, my biceps, my wrist, my calves, my thighs, and I was able to do so much more at the end of 6 months. But the best part was, because I had this break in life, sitting in Chicago hospital bed, I was able to conceive and start writing my first book. And I honestly think that the chemo acted as a catalyst in my brain, and I wrote a very, very wacky science fiction for children. So yeah, that is the first step. So many different successes that I managed to carve out of the setback that I've had. So I became an author, which is something which was a lifelong dream of mine. And then I started going to schools. I converted the talks which I was invited for into science workshops for children using the characters from my book. Then I wrote my second book, which was an inspiring, humorous autobiography. That became a bestseller. Then I started being invited to companies to deliver talks, and I became a motivational speaker. None of these would have been possible if I had continued on without any health problems. I would have been maybe a Fortune 500 company CEO, possibly. Maybe I didn't have the ability to do it. Maybe I had the ability to do it. Either way, I would have been in the corporate sector, working really, really hard to make some money for myself, make a lot of money for the shareholders of the organization. Today, I'm actually able to touch millions of lives positively, because I managed to say that I wanted to just make the best of the situation.
That's very inspiring, Ramji. So I'm going to go into some of the points that you mentioned as part of a detailed answer, such as your books and your motivational talks in the further course of my questions. My next question is is primarily for the benefit of our audience about how can someone convert a downturn into a success?
Yeah. So the first thing to remember in any of these is what is called growth mindset. What does growth mindset say? A growth mindset is a belief that ability is not something that you are born with, but ability is something that you can build. If you believe that, then you will always try and build ability to do the most challenging tasks. However, if you believe that ability is something which is limited by how much you're born with, then you will never try to excel in anything. You will just try your best and then think, and that's what it is. And something which you find difficult, you will not even attempt, because you don't want your inability to be exposed. Whereas a person who believes that ability can be built will take on difficult challenges, knowing that there is a probability that you will fail, but because you want to see what is the ability that you have to do that, and then learn from it, and then continuously build yourself up. So that is that mindset is very critical for converting setbacks to successes. And you should also remember that human beings are, there was a time when people used to think that the brain will not grow beyond a particular age. When you become an adult, your brain stops growing, and then the number of connections are the same, and no new cells will get added, etc. That theory has been debunked now. Now people know that the brain can grow all the way till you die. And the brain is plastic, which means it is constantly creating new connections. So the neurons are making so many connections. As we speak now, your brain is making new connections, my brain is making new connections. And it is learning something, it is becoming different, and it's constantly happening. And because of that ability of the brain to keep reorienting itself or reconnecting itself, you can learn anything. All you need to do is practice enough. So this ability to convert downturns into successes is also something you can learn. And hence, what I say can be used by people, anybody, even somebody who thinks that, my life is completely gone, there's nothing I can do. You can actually do certain things on a daily basis and practice becoming positive and practice growth mindset, practice resilience till you become damn good at it. So that's the important thing. So let's see what are the 3-4 things that I do which make me very resilient. Number one is to build confidence in yourself, that you should be able to take on anything and do a damn good job of it. You should have the confidence that I can do it. Then only you will attempt something new, because every time you're stuck at a particular point, you will have to try new things, and only you will be able to succeed. So to do that, what I do on a daily basis and regular basis is that I keep trying new things. So for example, I had never delivered a public talk before 7 years back. And when I was invited as the first time to deliver a keynote address in an employee event, it was more as an accident, So what had happened is I had sent a copy of my book to one of my friends, and I told him to circulate it to everybody, the link of my book, and he circulated it to his boss, and the boss said, okay, if this guy can come and deliver a talk at our next employee event, I will buy his book. So I said, okay, then I will come and give her a talk as long as she buys my book. And not only did she buy the book, she also bought copies for everybody in the audience. And I delivered the talk for the first time. It was an extempore talk. I just spoke about my life. And it became voted the best event of the evening. And that's how I started my journey as a motivational speaker. But I had the ability to jump and do something new. So I've tried so many new things after that. So for example, I want to deliver talks in Hindi. I'm not very comfortable in Hindi. So I've been learning Hindi from a tutor, somebody who speaks to me over the phone, and I learn from her. The other thing I have done is I want to create online class lessons. So I have learned how to do online video editing. So using a tool called Final Cut Pro. So today I'm an expert I'm a decent guy at editing videos. So I keep trying out new things. I try new food items. I don't stick to a routine all the time. I go and sit at a different chair at the dining table every day. I do different exercises for my physical well-being. I take on things like yoga, and I keep always refreshing things I do. And then every time I do something new and I do it well, I tell myself, I'm such an awesome guy. Okay, this makes me feel confident about myself. So the more you do this, the more confident you get. So this is the first trick, how to build confidence in yourself. The second trick is what I call ownership. So you need to be able to have a purpose in life. So anything that you attempt, you should put a long-term purpose in mind. So when I was 96 kilos weight, I had a purpose of becoming 74 kilos. And then what do? You have to then break it down to a daily targets. What can I do today to reach my purpose? So that today becomes very important. It has to be an immediate what you can do on that day to be closer to your purpose. And so you actually write down the things that you need to do on a daily basis. So for example, I have an exercise chart, which I have every alternate day I change it. And that exercise chart has a very detailed set of things I need to do. And I do that every day. And so every day you have a target, and every day you beat the target. That's how you build ownership into your brain. So the more you do this, the better you get at setting purpose, setting daily targets, achieving the daily targets. So that is the second thing that you need to do to pull yourself out and make yourself successful. The third thing is what I call a network of support, network of love. You need to build this meticulously. And the one thing that I realized in life is that when I went through my difficult phase, there's so many people who helped me, who reached out in some way or other, helped me. And there's some of them who are angels, actually. There's so much they went out of their way to help me. And I realized that as human beings, our purpose in life is to actually support and help each other. That's very, very important. So I started going out of my way to support people. In fact, it started off with people who would reach out to me. I would spend time with them. Sometimes it just takes 10 minutes for you to be able to change somebody's life. For example, somebody who has been sacked from a job, who sends me his CV or her CV and says, please use your network to support me and get me a job. All I need to do is spend 10 minutes and then mail it to 15, 20 of my friends. Maybe that person will get a job. 15 minutes of my life, and that guy's entire life is changed. So I started supporting people who reached out to me. Then I started going out of my way to find people to support. So today, the more number of people you reach out to and support, the happier you will feel, because you will feel the more compassionate you are, the happier that you are. And that's the way it works. So it builds happiness, number one. Number two is the more number of people you support, the more number of people are willing to support you. Number three is then you start realizing that the purpose of human beings is to support each other. Then you don't have a problem asking for support for yourself also. Because you're supporting so many people, you don't think that there is anything wrong in asking for help. And I go and ask for help all the time. There are so many of my friends who have supported me on this journey because of that. And I take it for granted. Because I believe that there is no way you can pay back everybody's kindness, but you can pay forward. You can keep supporting others. So that's the way I have managed to keep myself happy and get a network of support who are supporting me. These are all things which are required for you to convert a setback into success. So self-belief, ownership, network of support. And there is a last point, which is very, very important actually. And this is secret sauce. If you add the secret sauce, all the other things will become even more useful. And that's very simple actually. It's something I do 99.99% of the time. Can you guess what it is, Vivek?
Gratitude?
Well, gratitude actually comes along with kindness. So it's other side of the spectrum. So gratitude is absolutely right. I always feel so grateful for so many things I've had. But that I think automatically comes when you're kind to people. You also become grateful for what you have.
Yes.
But there's something else.
Okay.
You will rarely see me without that.
Is it positivity?
It's just a smile.
Okay.
I smile all the time. The more you smile, the more you're attracting people around you to come and connect with you. Because there is an inviting smile on your face. People feel comfortable coming and talking to you, confiding in you, taking your support, asking for help. And number two, just the act of smiling at a stranger or somebody, it releases what is called dopamine in your brain. And dopamine is one of those feel-good neurotransmitters. So you feel good every time you smile. Of course, if the other person smiles back, you feel even happier. So smile is something which builds on itself, and it helps all the other three things. You get a network of support, you get self-confidence when you smile, and the other person smiles back at you, and you can drive things very hard because you have a smiley, happy countenance. You can own your things and really go after your target. So smile is the secret sauce which makes everything else equally good.
How have your experiences on being a motivational speaker in corporate environments and also schools and colleges been?
So I have now addressed over 50 corporates in the last 6 to 7 years. I've also addressed more than 50 schools. I must have addressed about 30,000 children and maybe about 50,000 adults. And I've addressed people from fresh recruits in companies to global leadership of Fortune 500 companies. Each time I do this, I feel wonderful. Okay, that's the most important thing. Because I have so many people who come to me after that saying that was inspiring. And I really want to, my life is going to change because of what you said. And that really makes me feel wonderful. Even if 10% of that population is able to become 20% more positive, I think I've done a fantastic thing. Especially, and then children, there are so many children. And the other good thing that has happened to me is that my life story has also become a chapter in an 8th grade textbook. Macmillan's 8th grade textbook for CBSE students. There is a chapter on my life story. And I have kids from across the country who reach out to me on social media wanting to connect with me. And it really makes me feel wonderful that I can influence people's lives, such young people's lives. Because there, if you make a difference, it goes very deep into their psyches. It will make them hopefully far better people by listening to these stories. So I'm in some way helping build a better future for the nation and for the world by, in my own small way, I'm actually doing that, right? Helping people become better people, kids become better citizens. So it is a wonderful experience. It's really made me feel very happy about myself.
Ramji, could you please tell our viewers about your books, Oops, the Mighty Gurgle, and From Ouch to Oops?
As I said, the first book, From Ouch to Oops, Oops, the Mighty Gurgle, that was written from starting with a hospital bed in Chicago. At that time, I had a laptop, but I couldn't type. The only way I could type, my fingers were useless, so I could use only the thumbs, actually. I would laboriously type out using the thumbs. And it would take me, in a day, maybe I would be able to write 1 or 2 pages. It was so slow and difficult. But then I found a voice-to-text software, and then I started dictating into that, and then I managed to finish my book. That book was a completely wacky book. It is supposed to be a science fiction, but it's actually more of a fantasy fiction. It's about 2 kids, Chuck and Kia, who are accosted by an alien who has traveled from deep space, who's not only traveled in space, but also in time, back in time. So it's an alien from the future, millions of years into the future. And the alien happens to be an evolved pumpkin from the future. So the pumpkins in the future have evolved into a different species, and they are called gurgles. So this is a gurgle who has traveled back in time, and the gurgle has come back to Earth to stop humanity from being destroyed by another species of green pig-like creatures in another galaxy, because those pig-like creatures are very angry with human beings for playing this game called Angry Birds, in which they kill green pigs. So that's the story. And the story, that's the sanest part of the story, and it becomes far and more insane as the story goes. And the kids love this book because it's so insane. So I've had children who are like totally in love with this book. That is my first book. And then I wrote my second book, which is an autobiography. It talks about my own life. It's also a very humorous book. So it starts off very lightly about my life, and then how I found my wife, and about our love, our love marriage, and how we got our families to agree. And then it goes to, and the reason I wanted it to be very light reading is because I don't want to put off people with giving major gyan and things like that. It has to be light, Humor always opens the door of the heart. And then I talk about my illness and how I've had to go through these difficulties, how I turned my life around, and the lessons I learned from it, etc. Even that part is dealt in a very humorous fashion. So the book did very well, and it became a bestseller from day one. And it has had three reprints. It was HarperCollins had published it. So those are my two books. My third book is actually been written. It is with HarperCollins and it's getting edited. It's a book on parenting. I believe, and having interacted with over 30,000 children and many adults, I believe that we have a dearth of value education in the country. And the best place to impart value education is at home. So there are certain values which are very, very important, which we need to inculcate in our children. And I have a list of those values which I have talked about. And so the book hopefully should be out in the next 6 to 9 months. And I hope at least some parents are able to read it and get some inputs from that as to how to bring up their children.
Good to know about your third book, Ramji. Would you like to talk about your goal of touching 10 million lives positively?
So as I said, it's a purpose which you lay down for yourself, which should always drive you. And that's a purpose which will make sure that you are staying on the course without deviating, without slipping, and constantly striving to reach closer and closer to the goal on a daily basis. So somewhere after my first talk, I realized that I enjoyed touching people's lives positively. I seem to have the ability to make changes in their lives for the better. They feel the typical impact of one of my talks on people is they feel that all the things that they thought were big problems in their lives are not really such major problems, and that they need to focus on what they have instead of what they don't have. And they need to focus on what they can control instead of what they cannot control, instead of feeling frustrated about what they cannot control. And number three is they generally feel a little more lighthearted after my talk. So these are three things which are great achievements, right? I mean, if you can make everybody feel that way, then the world will become a better place. So I thought, why don't I put a very stretched target for myself, saying I want to touch 1 million lives positively. And I started on the journey. And then down the line, what happened is this chapter on my life got written in Macmillan's textbook. And immediately, so hundreds of thousands of children started learning about it. So then 1 million became too easy a target to go after, which is why now I have changed it to 10 million lives positively. So I want to do that on doing various things, So number one is that I am the co-founder of a startup company, Zentron Labs, which is a fantastic company which is into very innovative work on computer vision-based automation. It has the ability to change the lives of farmers in India. It has the ability to put India in a different league in terms of quality of manufacturing. So these are the two things which can actually help so many people in the country in whatever way we can contribute. So that's one. Number two is using my books and my talks. The number of people I reach out to is huge, and I touch their lives positively. I write blogs that can help people and touch their lives positively. I consult in Azim Premji Foundation, where I bring out a science magazine for school teachers. And even if that can help a few school teachers become better at doing their work, and they're able to influence a few thousand children to become better scientists and start having scientific thinking and scientific methods in their daily lives, then I would have contributed to making a massive change in the country. I'm also, now, obviously there's a pandemic going on, there's a lockdown, there are literally lakhs and lakhs of lives at stake. And Azim Premji Foundation is doing so much actually to help people at this juncture. And I have offered my services there, and I've stepped up to being part of the strategy, driving the strategy of the foundation in healthcare. So I am deeply involved in creating a strategy for the foundation in healthcare, where we are supporting in primary, secondary, and tertiary support for people across the country who are going through difficulties during this pandemic. So in every way possible, I try to reach out and support people. And that's how I try to reach my target of 10 million lives positively.
Would you have any specific message to the world, Ramji? A message that you might want your great-grandchildren who might watch this video a century later to listen to?
Yeah, 2-3 things. Number one is take life easy. I mean, don't sweat the small stuff. Be chilled out in life. Life is not fair. Life is a bunch of random probabilities which happen one after the other. There is no computer in heaven which is counting the number of good things you do and give you back equal number of good things. It's random probabilities. Sometimes you get good things, sometimes you get bad things. But why should you do good things in life? It is because it makes you feel good. The more good you do, the happier you feel. So for yourself, purely for that, you should be a good person. Don't think that you do good things that it's incumbent upon the universe to give you good things. It doesn't happen that way. The moment you realize that, then you will stop being very stressed out, worried, demanding, etc. in life. You will take life as it comes. You will enjoy every minute of it. That's number one lesson. Number two lesson is there are so many things in life that you cannot control. Focus on what you can control. Make every moment count. Maximize every moment in your life to become a better person. Invest in yourself, and that will always help. So, what I say in life is this. In this universe, every one of us, it's a massive tapestry which is being woven by every living being in the universe. Some of us carry a thread for a long time, our lifetime. Some have short lifetimes, some have long lifetimes. And some of us carry the thread beyond our lives by influencing other threads. And to such an extent that you can actually paint a wonderful picture for a long time to come in this tapestry by influencing so many other threads to work along with you, to go according to the message that you give. That is what I want to do in life. In this universe, I want to create a massive picture of beauty, which I can live as my contribution to the universe by touching so many people's lives positively and making them better persons. That's what I want to do.
That's very deeply inspiring, Ramji. Thank you very much. It's been really a pleasure to be able to talk to you, and wishing you the very best, Ramji. And it was really wonderful, to spend this time to talk to you.
Vivek, thank you so much. I really appreciated talking to you. I discovered a few things about myself when I was talking to you. So this will help me in my next talk also. Thank you so much.
That's great to hear, Ramji. So thanks a lot and see you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.